In 1898, European royalty was hiding a dark secret. When the eldest daughter of King Leopold II defied her tyrannical family for love, they didn't just disown her, they forged medical documents, declared her legally insane, and erased her from society. But what they didn't expect was that her lover was coming to break her out. Imagine being born a royal princess, surrounded by endless wealth and luxury, only to have your own family lock you inside a mental asylum because you fell in love with the wrong man. To hide the scandal, European royalty forged medical records, declared her legally insane, and erased her from history. Today, we're unpacking the incredible, tragic story of Princess Louise of Belgium, a real-life thriller involving duels, insanity, and a daring prison break. If you love deep-dive dark history stories like this, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Now, let's jump straight into the gilded halls of Brussels. By the time Louise turned 16, she was no longer just a neglected child, she was political currency. In 1875, her father arranged her marriage to Prince Philip of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Philip was 14 years older, immensely wealthy, and her first cousin once removed. Louise had barely been allowed to speak to men, let alone understand the physical realities of marriage. The wedding night was an absolute nightmare. Louise was so terrified and traumatized by Philip's aggressive advances that in the middle of the night, the 17-year-old bride fled the palace wearing nothing but her nightgown, running through the cold air to hide inside the royal greenhouses at Laeken. Her mother had to drag her back to her husband. The couple relocated to Vienna, moving into the Grand Palais Coburg. But behind the glittering facade of Viennese high society, Louise was trapped in what she later described as a gilded prison. Philip was controlling, possessive, and lived a hedonistic, depraved lifestyle. He introduced his naive young wife to alcohol and explicit erotica, attempting to mold her into a sophisticated, compliant courtly woman. Instead, Louise rebelled. Realizing her marriage was a loveless trap, she threw herself into the high life of Vienna, becoming a renowned fashion icon, hosting lavish galas, and running up staggering debts on clothes, horses, and jewelry. For 20 years, Louise endured this toxic marriage, having 2 children while maintaining an icy truce with her husband. But in 1895, everything changed. Louise was riding in her carriage through Vienna's famous Prater Park when her horses startled. A young officer stepped forward to help control the animals. His name was Count Gaza Matacic, a handsome 28-year-old lieutenant in a Croatian regiment of the Imperial Army. He was 10 years younger than Louise, charismatic, bold, and entirely unfazed by her royal title. The spark between them was instantaneous and explosive. For the first time in her life, Louise felt truly seen, loved, and respected. What began as secretive meetings quickly morphed into a public, brazen romance. Louise didn't just have an affair, she flaunted it. She traveled across Europe openly with Matacic, taking him to Paris, Cannes, and Nice, refusing to hide behind the discreet hypocrisy expected of 19th-century European royalty. The European aristocracy was scandalized. Royalty could have quiet affairs, but publicly abandoning a prince for a lower-ranking military officer was an unpardonable breach of protocol. Her father, King Leopold II, was furious, warning her that she was ruining the family name. Her pious mother pleaded with her to perform her duty. But Louise refused to yield. She wanted a formal divorce so she could live freely with the man she loved. Prince Philip was humiliated. Spurred on by Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria, who demanded that honor be restored, Philip challenged Matacic to a formal duel. In a dramatic showdown outside Vienna, the 2 men first fired pistols at one another and then engaged in a violent sword fight. Matacic, a trained soldier, easily outmatched the prince, wounding Philip severely in the arm but mercifully sparing his life. Instead of backing down, the humiliation drove Philip and the Austro-Hungarian establishment to take ruthless, extreme measures. By this time, Louise and Matacic were running out of money. Cut off financially by her husband and family, Louise had accumulated massive debts to fund her escape and lifestyle. Desperate, she resorted to buying luxury goods on credit and reselling them instantly for cash. When shopkeepers began turning her down, a forged signature of her sister, Crown Princess Stephanie, appeared on promissory notes worth millions of francs. This forgery gave Philip and the imperial authorities the exact weapon they needed. In 1898, they launched a coordinated strike against the couple. Metacic was arrested, stripped of his noble title and military commission, and thrown into a Croatian prison on charges of embezzlement and forgery. But for Louise, her family prepared a far sinister fate. Rather than suffer the public embarrassment of a criminal trial involving a Belgian princess, Prince Philip used his vast political influence to have Louise declared legally insane. Doctors signed off on documents claiming her passionate rebellion, financial extravagance, and refusal to obey her husband were clear symptoms of madness. At 40 years old, Princess Louise was forcibly taken into custody and locked inside a psychiatric hospital in Dobling, near Vienna. Over the next 6 years, she was transferred from one asylum to another, including Perkersdorf and Bad Elster in Saxony, kept under heavy guard and completely isolated from the outside world. The royal court assumed that behind asylum walls, Princess Louise would simply fade away into history. They completely underestimated Count Gaza Metacic. After serving 4 brutal years in prison, Metacic was released. Broke, discredited, and exiled, he dedicated every waking moment to finding the woman he loved. He tracked Louise to the asylum in Bad Elster, Germany. He spent months secretly surveying the facility, mapping out the guards' schedules, and contacting sympathetic allies who believed Louise was sane. In 1904, Metacic pulled off one of the most remarkable prison breaks in European history. In a daring operation straight out of an action movie, he managed to smuggle Louise out of the heavily guarded sanatorium during a planned outing. The lovers boarded a series of rapid train connections, evading border police, and successfully escaped into France, where Austrian authorities had no legal jurisdiction. Once safe in Paris, Louise and Metacic didn't hide, they fought back. They hired prominent medical experts who subjected Louise to rigorous psychological evaluations. In 1905, independent medical boards officially declared that Princess Louise was completely sane, exposing the court's psychiatric confinement as a politically motivated sham. With her sanity legally restored, she finally secured an official divorce from Prince Philip in 1906. Yet, true peace remained elusive. The long legal battles and institutionalization had left Louise and Metacic completely destitute. When her father, King Leopold II, died in 1909, he left behind a colossal fortune built on the brutal exploitation of the Congo. But in a final act of cold spite, Leopold manipulated his will, funneling his billions into secret offshore holding trusts and leaving his fortune to his young mistress, completely cutting Louise and her sisters out of their inheritance. Louise launched massive lawsuits to recover her rightful share, but the legal machinery dragged on for years while she lived in relative poverty in a modest Parisian apartment. Then came World War I, which wiped out what little remained of her investments and tied up her assets in enemy territory. Despite living in near poverty, selling her remaining personal effects just to pay rent, Louise and Metacic stayed together through every single hardship. Their love had survived duels, public disgrace, imprisonment, asylums, and financial ruin. Count Gaza Metacic passed away in Paris in 1923, exhausted by years of legal battles and exile. Devastated by the loss of the man who had risked everything to save her, Louise's health rapidly declined. Just 1 year later, on March 1, 1924, Princess Louise of Belgium passed away in a small hotel room in Wiesbaden, Germany, at the age of 66. She had no money, no title, and no crown. But as she lay on her deathbed, witnesses noted that she died clutching a small, worn photograph of Metacic to her heart. Princess Louise gave up absolute wealth, a crown, and her royal title, choosing a life in exile just to spend her final years with the man she loved. In the end, the royal court couldn't erase her spirit or her story. If you enjoyed this journey into dark royal history, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Did Louise make the right choice, or was the price too high? Don't forget to subscribe for more wild, forgotten historical deep dives. And if you want another unbelievable story of royal drama and scandal, click the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.